Welcome to Ashley On, your one-stop podcast where we talk about health and wellness, spirituality, and all things new. Stick around as we delve deep into innovations to support a better world.
Hello, and welcome to the show. Today's show is with Ray Kaderli, who is the founder of the Hemp Build Network, which is a network of professionals that are helping to make hemp and building with hemp and Hempcrete in particular possible. And it's going to be a great call today. Hope you'll really enjoy it. Ray is one of the pioneers who is actually starting to use Hempcrete.
Hey guys, as always, this episode is brought to you by Packed with Life Tea. You know, I always talk about how much I love iced tea, and Packed with Life tastes fantastic. And I don't add any sweetener or anything like that. Just great tasting iced tea, packed with organic adaptogens, including the 4 key mushrooms: lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, and reishi. Of course, it tastes great as hot tea as well, if that's your thing. And some people like to add a little bit of honey. But either way, no matter how you like your tea, you're going to love this tea, and it will boost your immune system, brain, lungs, and gut. That's why it's packed with life. So get yours today at packedwithlife.com. Have a great day.
Hi, Ray. How are you doing today?
Good.
Looks like you're standing in a Hempcrete structure of some sort there. What's going on there?
Oh, this is the, I'm just tinkering around the job site today. I got a few things to catch up on and do. And so I figured it'd make a nice backdrop for what we're talking about.
That's awesome. Good to see it come to life. Thank you for sharing. Are you, just for our audience, I'd love to just get an introduction of yourself and the work that you're doing, and then we can talk about, all kinds of details after that. But if you could just give us a quick introduction on you.
Yeah, as far as my background and how I got into Hempcrete, that usually tells the tale on the focus of things. I know a lot of people have their own story about how they became interested in it, and then how they became active in it. And then that's one of the things that's unique from person to person as you go through things. And so my background is a real estate broker and investor. And so my interest and activity was in building affordable homes that we could hold as rental properties for a rental portfolio as investment. And then now I've always been interested in sustainable methods, making things more efficient, reducing waste, all of those things like that, all of the altruistic side of things. And so that always interested me. In a previous lifetime, I had a regional recycling facility for organic materials, such as when people would cut down a tree, they would bring it to me. We'd grind it up, make mulch, compost, things like that, landscape soils, potting soils. And so I've always enjoyed the organic side of the industry. And when the Farm Bill passed in 2018, legalizing hemp on a federal level, I knew that was a big deal. I always like to watch trends and things of that nature. And so that interested me, and I started researching and just, being aware of things that were going on. And then I saw the building materials that could be produced. And so sometimes it's loud out here at the job site. How's the audio on your end?
It's okay. You're sounding okay. Yeah, you're sounding good.
Oh, okay, good. And that's one of the qualities of the Hempcrete as far as the sound deadening. We're right in that was a plane that just flew over, but we don't have the windows and doors in yet. So it's a lot to ask when the windows and doors aren't even in. But back to the story and the journey is that as I was more aware of things that were going on with hemp, and everybody was going into CBD, and then there was also the textiles, and I just watched things. And then I saw the building materials and the building systems that could be made with it. And then I started getting real specific on that because I saw a connection about something sustainable that was healthier and it was good quality construction. So it would last a lot longer and it would make the building more efficient. Now, one of the things that we're looking to do is, and part of the sustainability that we're doing is our investments is either putting solar or some sort of, all the aspects to where you can make things efficient and reduce the carbon footprint and then make things more profitable at the same time. And then if I can make something more efficient and I've got energy that's coming into that house and I rent it with utilities included, that's money in my pocket every single month. And so that very much intrigued me. And so just how much that efficiency can be increased was very significant, and I enjoyed learning that a lot. And that's why I went ahead and jumped in and said, hey, let's make this happen. And so that's what we're doing. And so this building that I'm in right now is a portable building that's part of a courtyard where there's food trailers, and this will be a hemp juicery that is in San Antonio, Texas. And then I just received the building permit to build utilizing Hempcrete as the installation, just a straightforward residential home in the city of San Antonio with very little pushback at all on the permitting process in a major metropolitan area. And so that's kind of the current status on where I am. That's kind of how I got here. And then we can talk about the in-betweens and where things are going ahead.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that detail there, Ray, on yourself. Let's take a little step back now. And just for those who might not be familiar, what is Hempcrete? You know, let's define what it is first, and then we can talk more about.
Yeah, great question. And then the 60-second introduction is there's the marijuana plant that everyone's familiar with. That's more of a small bushy plant that is grown mainly for the cannabinoids that's harvested out of the flower. And that's both the same style and size of plant for marijuana and for CBD. That, again, the focus is on the cannabinoids. Now, the fiber side that is used for textiles and things of that nature, those plants grow 10, 20 feet tall. And then the outside of the plant, it's not a bark, but it's the outside of the plant gets harvested. And that's what goes for textiles, a lot of other industrial applications, car door panels, things like that. But the woody plant is about 80% of the volume of the plant. And then that is what's left over. And now, because these plants grow to be, 10, 20 feet tall in a season, to do that, they are quite hollow and have a lot of air pockets in the woody part of that. It's not like a tree that's very solid. And so what that'll do is when you combine that with lime, now lime once was limestone, and then it goes through a kiln process, and then it turns back into a powder that you can mix in with things. And then when you do that, it turns back into a stone, more or less. And this is a very crude explanation, but the lime mixed with the ground up parts of the hemp plant, the woody part, that is what makes hempcrete. And so just for frame of reference, if you were baking oatmeal cookies and you added way too much oatmeal, that's about what hempcrete feels like when you first mix it up. You mix the lime, the water, and the hemp herds, and the herd is the middle woody part of the plant. And then, that's about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more in the size and the particle size. And so, so when you cast that in place or you form it into a wall, now that wall is turning back into a stone, but all of the air pockets that are in the woody part of the plant, the herd, all those air pockets are being turned back into a stone with the air pockets in them. And so it's like an organic limestone Yeti cooler for your house. And because it's lime, it's the pH level is highly resistant to mold. I dare say mold proof, but if you have dust on the wall, that dust can grow mold, but lime, not a chance. And so it's also has some benefits about being pest resistant. When vermin and insects want to go into it, the alkalinity of the lime, it hurts them. And so they steer elsewhere, and then they make their homes elsewhere. And so the main thing and the benefits, other than the sound deadening and things like that, are that it's as close to being fireproof as you can get. The testing that they've done on the ASTM, which is the engineering side of things, that ranks it on a scale of 1 to 10. It came in at around a 0. And so there's a lot of tests that are just done where you take a little torch like what you use to sweat plumbing pipes, point it at the hempcrete, let it burn all the fuel out of that torch, and it doesn't flame out. And so it's highly fire resistant. And so all of those benefits together make it a great building product. But that's what it is. It's the woody part of the plant, which is usually a byproduct of the fiber being taken off. And so that mixed with lime and water is what you got.
Wow, that's great. So how is it easy to figure out the ratio, or is that a trade secret, or is it just, open knowledge of how much lime versus how much hemp you put together with the water?
Right. And there's a couple of different styles and forms of doing this. Now, if you're casting it in place, like these walls that are behind me, we put two forms together, and then we loosely dumped the hempcrete down in it and camped it in place. That's called casting it in place. And then the ratios on that for most of the binders that you find in the market are about a 50-pound bag of lime binder to about a 44-pound bag of hurd, and then somewhere between 6 to 10 gallons of water, depending on what you're doing and how you're mixing it. And so there are different binders that have different ratios. For example, there are some spray applications to where instead of mixing it up and then casting it into place by hand, you can use a mechanized delivery method to where you either spray it with an air cannon, and it blown in place is more of an accurate term than sprayed, but then there's also ones that mix at the nozzle. So you can mix it beforehand, and then it just gets shot through an air cannon. Then there's some that take the dry ingredients of the hurd and then have a wet mix. So there's a couple of different varieties of that. And then I have selected one of the more simplistic ones where it's mixed and just blown through an air cannon. And so depending on the job, depending on supply chain availabilities, because this is all very new and just coming onto the market. And so you have to be able to go in a variety of different directions and still take care of your construction project. And so that's what we're certainly doing. But that's those are some of the ratios that you're out there now. What you really want to watch as far as the industry goes is how much price per cubic foot of hempcrete installed, and then that is a good commodity price. Subcontractors are going to be surfacing that will perform this task in any given market, and that's probably how that's going to be calculated and bid on a professional level, with a general contractor working with a subcontractor.
Okay. So you mentioned ASDM and the engineering certifications. And you mentioned that with regards to fire. What other engineering certifications are required for hempcrete? I mean, the thing I first think about is, somebody's going to want to build with this. They're going to want to get insurance. The insurance company's going to want to know, what is going on here, and you want to have everything be seamless, right? So what engineering, if it's not ASDM, what else is it that is required for that sort of seamless production schedule to kind of fit into the existing insurance industry?
Well, the direction that everything is headed toward is that of a code, and then to where it can be written in these codes to where an architect can just specify it in a set of plans per that code, and you really don't need the oversight and the stamp of an engineer as much. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm relying on the stamp of an engineer, as is the city. And so what an engineer will do is they will defer the liability of approving something that could go wrong from the city to the engineer. And so if the engineer's stamp is on it, the city will say, hey, if an engineer will stamp it, then if they're good with it, we're good with it. Now, for an engineer to stamp it, all of this I'm talking about before codes. Before there's just a garden variety building code. If you want to get,
we can't wait on that. We know not to wait on that. That's like the FDA.
Right. Yeah. And so, but I will say the U.S. Hemp Building Association, they just completed their submission process to have those codes established, and so they're doing a fantastic job as a trade association. And kudos and credits to everybody who worked on that. That is getting that. So as an organization, they're providing a leadership role to the rest of the industry in establishing those codes. But until those codes are established, to be insulation, and right now that's all that Hempcrete is insulation, nothing more, nothing less. There are some block models that are manufactured where they have a load-bearing infrastructure within the block. But for the purposes of the conversation, the Hempcrete is not the load-bearing part of it. It's not structural. And so to be insulation, you need to do two things and two things only. You need to have a fire rating. You don't need to be fireproof, but you need to have a fire rating. And that's what the ASTM test did. And so then you also need to have an R value as far as what is the insulation on there. It doesn't have to be a good one, but you have to have one. And so to be insulation in a project that is specified and approved and stamped and permitted, those are the two things that need to accomplish. Now, the ASTM did the fire rating, and then, like I said, the performance was fantastic. It was phenomenal. It blows everybody's mind away, and I think a lot more will come into that, especially in multifamily, where fire is it's not just one house; it's a whole building full of homes, and so. But as far as the R value goes, it's R2 per inch, roughly. And then the translation comes from the European U values to where you can kind of extrapolate an R value from those U values. And so that makes it to where, when you're doing your takeoffs and you're doing your specifications, you can just go with that R2 per inch, and an engineer has the documentation to where they can stamp on that. And those are the two things.
Wow. Okay. So, a traditional building would be the difference then is just the insulation, or wouldn't you be replacing the concrete blocks that would go into a structure, or the poured concrete?
Yeah, it all depends on the type of structure and what you're doing. Like I said, framing is still framing. Like in the walls behind me are wood 2x4 studs. And so those studs are exposed on the outside, and then they'll be plastered over. On the walls that I'm building, they're encapsulated. So there's a variety of ways to do your framing. Now you can do metal framing, whatever you want to make a structure of, you can make a structure of it. The only caution in anything metal is that the lime is highly corrosive. And so you want to make sure that there's a barrier or a very good coating. I have shied away from it just because, yes, you can have a manufacturer say that the galvanization and the treatment will not rust within a corrosive environment, but that's a lot to ask. And so I try not to ask too much of the framing members, especially if you're going to encapsulate them in something that is corrosive and you can't peek at it all the time. And so, wood is very sustainable done correctly. A lot of people are like, hey, we need to not cut down trees or do anything like that. And that's not necessarily the case. We need to cut down trees responsibly. And, it goes back to the basic economics of the tragedy of the commons. If you cut down at a higher rate than they're growing, well, that's a bad thing. If you're cutting down at, the opposite of that at a slower rate than what they're growing, well, then you'll have trees forever. And so we just have to make sure that the stewardship of that natural resource coincides with our building practices. And so, but there's a lot of good ways to make the frame. Now, I know there's some blocks that have the structural component within the Hempcrete block. I haven't looked at that incredibly closely, but I do know that several are. I'm just like I said, I'm going just simple first.
That's just biofiber, right? I think is who those guys are.
Correct. They're out of Canada, and so I'm going simple first, and then I'll explore all those other things and branch out into them as I'm able to research them and as they come onto the market. And then there's several block scenarios to where you can combine block with cast, and to where the biggest handicap for Hempcrete right now is the drying time. Like, what we put in the walls behind me is about a week old. and it's going to need about another 5 weeks before we can come back in with plaster. That's the kiss of death on most construction, especially production sites. Now, if you're planning it out, which we are, and we're doing it all in-house, which we are, it's not that big of a deal. We just stack our projects, stack our trades, and then away we go. And so, but that is a headache that I'm willing to bear, that I've built the structure of how we're building in order to accommodate that headache. And any headache in the construction world is highly avoided. And so it'll definitely be something that, we work that out as we go through it to where we can shrink those times and do more while it's curing and reduce those cure times. For example, the spray applied methods that I was talking about, they shorten those curing times simply because they use less binder, and then they have formulated it to where they can use less binder and still get the higher performance. Those are all the tweaks that you're going to see in the industry. The hemp herd is going to stay the hemp herd. There's the plant's not going to technologically advance itself other than just through getting different strains and varieties, but it's kind of gone as far as it's going to go as far as being awesome, which is a long way. Now you'll see a lot of growth in the industry in the lime and the lime manufacturing, and the cooks in the kitchen there will be formulating and doing things that are fantastic to give it more performance on different characteristics, whether it's shorter curing times, whether it's use of less binder. All those physical characteristics and properties can be tweaked, but we have to be careful on doing that we don't sacrifice the sustainability and all of the other things that are part of that as well. We don't want to achieve success and then go backwards on that. So
yeah, understood. What about the price? Like what's your comparisons versus doing it the traditional way, like you versus building with Hempcrete? Have you gotten far enough to be able to understand that, or are you still working on understanding that?
Depending on the style, design, architecture of your house, can widely vary. A lot of the Hempcrete homes that have utilized that building material are very bespoke. They're very elegant, exotic. They're not a common one-to-one comparison on something else that's in the market. Now, what we're doing is, I always joke that the investments that I like done correctly should be extremely boring. And so money doesn't like too much excitement, and I like to keep it that way. And so what we're doing is just a very basic design, very straightforward. And so I'll have some really good comparisons for you. But for example, I would say as a general rule, you're going to increase your cost by right now in the marketplace by about 10 to 30%. And so the insulation is more expensive, but you are subtracting a few of the elements that you would normally need to put in, like you don't need to wrap the house in sheathing and in Tyvek. And so you go from 7 layers of a wall to about 3. And so there are some savings in there. And what we'll need to be doing is maximizing those efficiencies. And so, if you're going to have extra cladding on the outside and have other layers of things, it reduces the efficiency of the Hempcrete, and it also increases the cost. And so when I'm doing my comparisons, and what I would encourage others to do is plaster on the inside, plaster on the outside, Hempcrete, and whatever your framing is in the middle. And that sandwich is a good sandwich. Don't add any more layers to that. And then, now design a house that you want. But as far as like comparison for efficiencies, use that model.
Okay. Thank you. So do you tell us a little bit more about what are you doing with the Hemp Build Network? How is that structured, and what are you trying to accomplish with that?
Yeah, the Hemp Build Network is, like I said, my background is a real estate broker and investor. And so I want to have a good quality, healthy asset that I can rent and earn income and then build long-term legacy wealth through the appreciation of it and the performance of the asset, plain and simple. And so with the network, what I realized is that to build that type of asset or to build that type of home, whether it's a custom home or whether it's an investment property, what I need to do is I need to have 5 things. And with 4 or fewer, your project's going to fail. And so I saw a lot of folks go down the pathway of wanting Hempcrete. They learned about it. They liked it. They liked the performance. They liked the sustainability, the carbon sequestration, all of that. They liked it, loved it, wanted it, said yes, and then floundered and their project failed or never started. And so, you know, those 5 things are a network of professionals and resources. And so the 5 things that are needed are the architect that will design the building, the engineer that will stamp the architect's plans, the builder on the local level that will be the general contractor that actually coordinates everything and makes sure things are done well, and then the subcontractor. Now, the subcontractor, there's a handful across the country right now, and that's it. And then so to be viable, you need to have a good network of subcontractors. And so we're looking to do training programs that will create that. And the last thing of the 5 is the supplier. And so supply chains are in the news with everything. It's especially identifiable in the hemp world because these are brand new supply chains that are being established. And so what I do like about the heartache that we've all suffered through supply chain issues is that it has made us aware that there is such a thing as the supply chain. And, you know, it's not just a phone call away for everything. We have to think ahead. And these things come from somewhere. And so people are willing to identify it with that. And so those supply chain issues are key. And so the Hemp Build Network will organize all of those 5 components and make them come together. We're more of the center puzzle piece. Now, I will be the general contractor and builder on many of the projects that I do. I will outsource as much of that as I can. I obviously don't have a professional background in architecture and engineering, and so I will outsource that. Now, the main thing that I want is architects and engineers and builders that will be part of the process that, for lack of a better phrase, won't kill the deal. They've taken the effort and taken the time to explore it enough to where if they have a client that wants it, they're not going to sit down at the table with them and go, you know, you guys, you could just do spray foam and save all this pain in the neck. Or, you know, you're going to spend more money here, not acknowledging that they're going to make up all the money on increasing the performance of their house or not focusing on their needs. And so I want professionals in the network that explore it enough, educate themselves enough. And those are one of the things that we're going to be doing is providing that type of educational resource to where if you're an architect, for example, or an engineer, there's not a whole lot of dramatic extra education that you need. You don't have to go back to school and get a doctorate degree on how to put hempcrete in the wall. You just have to know a few basics about how it functions, about how it can be a pain in the ass on a job site so that you don't create something that the subcontractor's gonna seek you out and you know, try to hurt you because you made their life difficult. And then also for the long-term performance of it to where you don't create something that is a bad idea that could have otherwise been a good idea. And so those design and build out scenarios need to talk to each other. And so that's what we're doing is just letting that network establish itself. And then, like I said, we like to be the center puzzle piece. I'll do as much of that as I can on the projects that I want, but I don't want to be an impediment to the industry. I want to advance the industry. I would welcome competition and collaboration. And so everything that I have is on a pathway to production. And so that pathway to production is something that I think is very key and very important. And then that's what the Hemp Build Network will do is collaborate and bring all those things together to where we can accomplish that. Because it's only in a production level that we realize all the economic, ecological, and social benefits of hemp.
Yeah, well, that's great, Ray. I appreciate you being with us today. thank you so much for your time, and thank you for what you're doing and spreading the message around what's possible with building with hemp.
Likewise.
I really appreciate you joining us. So with that, any last words that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah, just what you're doing is the most important part of the industry right now, and that's sharing the story. It's a fantastic story. It does get a little bit fragmented sometimes, but sharing the story and drawing attention to it is the number one most important thing in the industry over the next 1 to 3 years, because awareness will drive demand, and demand will drive performance in the industry. And then that's what we need. So I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you sharing the story, and encourage everyone to have fun sharing the story. It's an exciting one.
All right, Ray. Thanks a lot, and have a great day.
You bet. Adios.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Ashley on Nothing But the Truth for a Better You and Me.